Hey, this morning is the third Sunday in Advent, and we've seen over the course of the last few weeks that Advent is waiting for the arrival, and it's waiting for the arrival of something momentous. Sometimes, there's the advent of someone getting married. It's the momentous event of bringing two lives together as one, and so that momentous thing that we're awaiting is the arrival, of course, of Jesus that we'll be celebrating this week. And today, as I said, is the third Sunday of Advent, and so we have the three candles that are lit. And you might be wondering, if you can see from where you're seated, there are 4 Advent candles. 3 of them are purple, but today's candle, the third from the left, is pink. And throughout church history, the reason that that's pink is that it signifies joy, but the priests in the church would wear purple to signify the coming arrival of the king. But they singled out this third Sunday of Advent, being halfway through Advent, saying, yes, we're almost there. It's a season of hope. It's a season of expectation. But it's pink for joy. And today, although we are speaking on the idea of daring to hope, and that's what the whole thing is about, it's hoping, that today we're going to see how hope turns to joy. And so if you're looking for a little joy, how many of you are looking for a little joy in your life? You looking for joy? All right, let's have a sense of expectation this morning of what God's going to bring to us. The Advent text that we've been using to guide us through the course, I can tell when that's not on. Sorry, I heard the ch-ch-ch-ch. There we go. The text that's been guiding us throughout these last weeks is this from Luke chapter 2. It's after Jesus was born, but it's a part of that birth narrative. And it says this: Now there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting, because that's what hope does. Hope waits. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel. And we looked in the very first week what that consolation was. The nation of Israel had felt beaten down for centuries. If you look in Matthew, you see that part of the birth story is talking about the lineage of David. And it goes from the beginning to, do you remember the significant event right in the middle? The Babylonian exile. And it was this time when this nation, an enemy of Israel, came and just smashed Israel and dispersed the Jews all over the world. And the reason that is highlighted in the story is because the people of Israel were looking for rescue. They were looking for a savior. And so when he is waiting for the consolation, for the comforting of Israel, what he's looking for is someone to come. And if you were here last week, you learned that it was 360 years, perhaps, according to the Greek Orthodox Church. They believed that Simeon was 360 years old and was waiting for this. And because of some things that he had said earlier in his life and the way that he had translated a passage of Scripture, God was making him see the fulfillment of his prophecy. And so he too was waiting. He's like, God, I've had enough. It's bad enough for people to live to 100, but 300, this is ridiculous. And so he was looking for this Messiah. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was on him. And what we've done in the course of this series is highlight what that waiting looked like. But one of the things that I want to just take a little sidetrack right now is, how many of you remember what it was like as a kid, or how many of you as kids just love the waiting for Christmas Day? We were planning our Christmas Eve service. It's called the Holiest of Nights, and one of the people in the group said, I love Christmas Eve because it's that sense of expectation. And as a kid and as a family, we would get all dressed up. Jerry, this is your daughter. And she was saying we would get all dressed up, and that there was this mystery in the church with the candlelight and the music, and we knew what was coming up, and it was the dinner, and it was the gifts, but coming together in the church and the music and the lights, and it was just something special. And you guys helped create that specialness this last week. Because although we did the caring tree, we also, how many of you remember getting presents for Ketty and Alexis down in Mexico and their mission down there? Remember that? Well, those gifts arrived, and here are some of the pictures.
Getting ready. Our tiny living room is a mess. But
these are all from you guys.
It's so much fun seeing what people gave. And we're excited. Our first event is this weekend. So, yeah, be praying that lots of kids come, it goes well, and kids feel the love of Jesus.
Now, some of those kids had to work. Don't have the same child labor laws that we have. And some of the kids had to work, but 16 in the first group showed up. I don't know how many showed up so far in the second group. But here is Alexis handing out some of the gifts. Here's one of the gift bags that one of you had. You can see the soccer balls that were gifted to them from Culver's. And here they are. Those soccer balls weren't blown up yet, so they're wearing them as helmets, as you know. And then here is their thank you to all of us. Okay, that's enough of that. All right. But just that stop already. But just that sense of anticipation and the joy that you brought them, thank you so much, because they are children who are truly growing up in poverty, deep poverty, and your gifts made the season for them. So thank you. So what we've done so far this month is that we have looked at this little prophet. It's called a minor prophet, not because his message is insignificant, but because it's short. It's only 3 chapters long, and it's called the book of Habakkuk, and it's in the Old Testament, just a few pages before the book of Matthew and the Christmas story. And we learned in chapter 1 a couple weeks ago. It was a tough chapter to read. It's an even tougher chapter to digest and to make a part of your life. But we learned that you can both wrestle with honest questions. We might call that doubt. But you can wrestle with honest questions and embrace a genuine faith in God. We saw that this spiritual giant of about 600 BC did exactly that, and he has been lifted up in Scripture for us. He wrestled with God. He was crying out, God, why have you allowed our nation to become like this? You need to correct it, God, please. But we also saw that in the midst of complaining, in the midst of doubting, that he was also embracing the fact that he could enter into a conversation with God. And this is what hope is. So we can do both of those things. How many of you were relieved that it's okay to have questions? You know? So often we think that we're supposed to have this whatever rock-solid faith means, but we all at one point in time, or many points in time, or every day have questions of God. God, if you are just, if you are loving, if you are all-powerful, why do you allow these things to happen? And so, chapter 1. And then in chapter 2, God says, now wait and be amazed, because I'm going to do something phenomenal in your midst. And Habakkuk is like, yes, my prayers are going to be answered. And God says, I am going to raise up your enemy to bring judgment upon the earth. And that, buddy, includes you and your people. And Habakkuk is like, what? But what we took away from that chapter was this, right from one of the opening verses in chapter 2. Even if it is long in coming, will you say these words with me? Wait for it. We believe that God is a God of justice and he's a God of mercy. And so God's word to Habakkuk was, wait for it. You see, hope waits. Hope wrestles. But hope also waits. And we learned that if it's not God's time, don't try to force it. And we saw how Habakkuk outlined 5 different cases in how the enemy of Israel was always trying to force things. And God warned him, when you do this, what goes around comes around. And if you're going to try to force it, that thing's going to come right back and bite you in the behind. And so, if it's not God's time, don't try to force it. Because when it is God's time, will you say these words with me? You can't stop it. Turn to the person next to you and say, you can't stop God. If it's not God's time, don't try to force it, because when it is God's time, you can't stop it. Now, I predicted with chapter 1 that you wouldn't like it. I mentioned last week, if you didn't like chapter 1, which most of you didn't, you would hate chapter 2. But chapter 3, I predict you're going to like this. I predict you're going to like this. And if God tells Habakkuk to wait, and I had some people ask me this, so what are we supposed to do in our waiting? Right? If we're not supposed to force it, if we're not supposed to make it happen, and how many of you were told, make stuff happen? It's a good leadership principle. Make it happen. But God says, hey, back off a little bit. Trust me for this. Trust me. The question then is, what do you do while you're waiting? So let's take chapter 3 apart a little bit. And we'll give something for us to think on and to pray on and to meditate over in the course of these days leading up to Christmas Eve. So Habakkuk chapter 3 and verse 1. If you have a device, go ahead and open up that. If you're in a paper Bible, it's, as I said earlier, just a few pages before the New Testament, you'll find these few pages called Habakkuk. All right, the book begins like this. This prayer was sung by the prophet Habakkuk. So he gets this bad news in chapter 2 that God's going to set them straight by raising up an enemy, and then he's told, and don't try to force what you want on the situation, because this is what happens to your enemy when they've tried to force it. Don't go there. And in response, it says this prayer was sung by the prophet Habakkuk. Now, that's typically flyover country in the Bible, because you want to get to what? You want to get to the prayer, right? You want to hear what it has to say, but it's good to pause there for a second. Because notice that in the waiting, what is Habakkuk doing? What's the second word? He's praying. He's entering into conversation with God. And notice, how is that prayer being relayed? It's, when I get up here, you're going to thank God for this, that I don't sing the prayer, right? If I did, you'd probably all head for the hills. But Habakkuk sung his prayer. Now, if you're in the New International Version, you'll notice that it says something different. It says this, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet and can anyone help me with how to pronounce this word? On Shigionoth. A prayer of Habakkuk the prophet on Shigionoth. Okay. What does that mean? Anybody want to guess? I mean, what the heck is Shigionoth? Well, to shed some light on it, this is the only place in the Old Testament and the entire Bible where this word is used, except the singular form of this word is used in Psalm chapter 7. So let's go there and maybe we'll have some enlightenment. Psalm 7 says this, a Shiggaion of David, which he sang to the Lord concerning Cush, a Benjamite. Okay, what the heck is that, right? Now, the reason I'm going to spend just a moment or two on this word is because scholars, like most of us, are like, what the heck does that mean? Let's try and figure it out. And we know that the Bible was written for us, but not to us. And so what we want to do is you try to put yourself into the shoes and into the minds of those to whom it was originally written. And so what scholars do is they look at languages outside of Hebrew, but near to it, to see if there are any similar sounding words. And what scholars say is this, that it is a song, it's music, it seems to be a musical term, and it means that it has uneven meter. So it's not like Drummer Boy, right? It's not boom, 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 but it's bum, bum, ba-da-da-dum, bum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, bum. It's like rap. It's filled with emotion. It's like spoken word, rap, and The Doors, Led Zeppelin. Oh, anything. What's their favorite group? I'm showing my age, right? It's filled with emotion, possibly accompanied by a whimpering sound. What's that? Well, did you remember when last week, if you were here, we played a beautiful song sung by Christians from both Jewish and Arab extraction. And what I wanted to highlight last week is that there is hope. There is hope for our world, and isn't it beautiful that at least for some people it comes in the name of Jesus. And here, while the people of their respective heritages are basically trying to kill one another, here they, under Jesus, are singing to him together. But when there was an Arab fellow who came out, and it sounded like he was calling the Muslims to prayer during one of their times. Do you remember hearing that? And there's that almost a little high whimper. And again, I'd love to try to, hey, Sandler, he can do that. This guy did some falsetto the other week. It was so cool. I bet you could do that call to prayer. But I think that's what it means. And it's contextual to the area, right? And so the idea, though, is that there is this impassioned worship. That even though he is wrestling, and even though he is waiting, he is engaged in prayer with God, and it's not just, oh God, blah, blah, blah. It's, oh God. And why don't we just try it here? Should I try it? Yeah, why not? God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered in... What's that? His glory covered in the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. I have no idea what it sounded like, and please do not excerpt that. If that goes out as a reel this week, I'm dead. But did you see what we're getting at? And now, mind you, that is just what some scholars say. Some don't even want to go there, and they say, we have no idea what this means. But I think it's important to at least realize that it's music. So the question is, what did Habakkuk do while waiting? He entered into conversation with God, an artistic or physical expression. He didn't just sit there and twiddle his thumbs. I think sometimes we think of waiting on God as just doing nothing, right? But notice he's engaged in continued conversation, but he's also engaged in using his body in artistic expression. For some of you, it's playing guitar. It's singing, like Habakkuk. For others, it might be building stuff. For Jerry, he loves his car. He turns a wrench when he wants to worship. He wants to get 5 more horsepower out of his engine. Right? Have you ever done that? Yeah, of course you have. Other people might do different things. It might be needlework. It might be painting. But these are all ways in which you can pray to God. Have you ever seen worship dance? I wish we would do worship dance here sometime. Have you ever seen it? With ribbons and it's a beautiful expression of praise to God. I believe that's what's going on. We're only in the first verse, aren't we? But this is what Habakkuk did while he was waiting. He didn't just sit around. All right, moving right along. Habakkuk chapter 3 and verse 2. Habakkuk goes on, and this is now his prayer. I've heard all about you, Lord. I'm filled with awe by your amazing works. In this time of our deep need, help us again as you did in years gone by. And in your anger, remember your mercy. If you have your own Bible, go ahead and circle that. And in the margin, write summary of the entire chapter. Because what he's doing is exactly what you were taught perhaps in speech class. Tell him what you're going to say it, and tell him what you just got done saying, right? And so in verse 2, that's what he's doing. This is what's going to happen in the rest of this chapter. But notice and underline a couple of things, or highlight in your mind a couple of things. I am filled with awe by your amazing works. What's going to happen in verses 3 through 15 now is he's going to outline those amazing works. But he's not afraid to go back and say exactly what he did in chapter 1. This is a time of deep need. Help us again as you did in years gone by. I had a fellow come up to me prior to the first service and just share that he's really going through a difficult time with his spouse of some years, and that they're on the verge of divorce. And I said, this message is for you today, because you're there and you're waiting. You're waiting for God to do something, and hang on as best you can, but don't try to force it. In this time of our deep need, he's not afraid to cry out. Help us again as you did in years gone by. And in your anger, imagine saying this to your parent. Your parent's upset with you because you got back past your curfew, and maybe some things are a little bit out of sorts. And you turn to your parent and say, "Now, in your anger, Dad, remember your mercy." And here's Habakkuk doing that to God. Notice the boldness in his waiting. He's not trying to force God's hand, but he's being honest to the depth of his being. Okay, so we saw this phrase, help us again as you did in years gone by, and now verses 3 through 15 expand on this. We don't have time to go through all of these, but I do want to point out some things. There are 3 sections in this poem, in this prayer. Verses 3 through 7, 8 through 10, and 11 through 15. 3 different stanzas, but all of them are kind of throwing all these things into a pot and swirling them around. He has all of these images of the power of God. want you to close your eyes for a moment and think of one thing that illustrates for you the power of God. When you have something, raise your hand. Okay, what is it, Kim? The parting of the Red Sea. Anybody else? Something that demonstrates the power of God. Lightning. Oh, how great thou art, right? I love that song. Okay, something else. The universe, just staring up at the sky, and you realize God created all of this. Something else. Yeah, Paul. Being raised from the dead, perhaps, or raising Lazarus from the dead, or the power over death. Anybody else? One more. Come on, give me one. Yeah. The stars at night. That was a duplicate. Wait, you already said two things. Atomic energy, that's, yeah. So the idea of power, and that God enabled us to understand his creation to the point where we can release this amazing amount of energy from the smallest of things. Anyway. But so this is what he does. He takes all of these images, he throws them in the pot, and he stirs them around. So it's really hard to kind of take this all apart. But as you get to know the Old Testament, you start to say, oh, I know what that's talking about. But mind you, there are some things in here that scholars say, we're not sure what that's talking about. And that's okay. But it says this: God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. And those two areas are thought to designate the Sinai Peninsula, on which Mount Sinai is located. And Mount Sinai was where Moses went up and met with God and delivered the Ten Commandments. And so this designates the very presence of God, and it says his glory covered the heavens. That is his glory. Remember the cloud at the top? And his praise filled the earth. It continues, his splendor was like the sunrise. Rays flashed from his hand where his power was hidden. And now this sounds like he's hearkening back to the creation story itself. Plague went before him, pestilence followed in his steps. What is that talking about? It's talking about the Exodus, where the people of Israel were freed from their captivity to Egypt, and God brought the 10 plagues upon Pharaoh and the people of Egypt because Pharaoh refused to listen to the request to let my people go. And he stood and shook the earth. He looked and made the nations tremble. The ancient mountains crumbled and the age-old hills collapsed, but he marches on forever. And I have no idea what that means. I mean, it sounds like maybe there was an earthquake, and he's hearkening back to that, and just think of the God who, just back to lightning and thunder. Oh Lord, how great thou art. When I, in awesome wonder, consider all the worlds thy hands have made. He stood still, he shook the earth. I already read that. I saw the tents of Cushan in distress, the dwellings of Midian in anguish. Again, huh? Were you angry with the rivers, Lord? This is verse 8. Was your wrath against the streams? Did you rage against the sea when you rode your horses and your chariots to victory? What's that about? Well, the parting of the Jordan River, the parting of the Red Sea, and all of these things, you see, they're just being thrown in the pot, and all of these images are coming forward. Now, we talked about something like this about 2 months ago. Do you remember when I talked about imaginative prayer? This is what Habakkuk is doing. He's just allowing all of these images that he has of God to flood his mind and flow from his pen. And this is what he's doing in his waiting. He's also remembering. He's remembering. And what we need to remember is that we don't just wait and do nothing, but we have to realize that although we enjoy God on the mountaintop, how many of you have ever had a mountaintop experience with God? You know, man, I remember when I was coming into this town for the very first time, and I was driving in off of 9094, and I took Highway 60, and I crested the hill coming from Lodi into Prairie du Sac, and I saw the villages. And at that time, I think the Methodist Church had just put up their blue fluorescent cross. And it was just one of these mountaintop experiences when I saw the village. And I heard God say, "This is your ministry." It wasn't a voice that came out of the radio. It was this strong, strong impression. You know, here it is. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. We enjoy God in those times. Will you say these next words with me? But we get to know him in the valley. You see, what's going on is that right now, Habakkuk isn't really having a mountaintop experience. He's having a valley experience. And he's allowed all the times that he's learned of God to come rushing back to him. And as he does that, it forms a new picture for God. His hope is turned to joy as he remembers who God is. This section wraps up with verses 16 through 18, this chapter, I should say. And it says this: I trembled inside when I heard this. My lips quivered with fear. My legs gave way beneath me, and I shook in terror. In my notes when I was preparing for this series, I wrote down that this is referring to the declaration from God that he was going to raise up Babylon to judge the nations. But as I studied this further, I'm like, wait, the word "this." I think what he's talking about are these images that he has of God. And he realizes the mighty power of the creator and the sustainer of the universe. And when he thinks about this, he trembles inside. He realizes that compared to God, there is nothing that compares to God. God is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence, the way the previous chapter ended. My lips quivered with fear. We have a 1-year-old puppy right now, and whenever he's excited, his bottom jaw, it starts quivering. If he's hungry, or if he wants to go for a hike, or if I'm going to give him a reward, that little jaw starts going. And I picture Habakkuk. My legs gave way beneath me, and I shook in terror. He just did a set of squats, and his legs are just burned out. But he didn't do a set of squats. He's just like jelly in the sight of God and in the presence of God. I will wait quietly. Underline those two words. Wait quietly. Remember chapter 2 rather? Wait how? Patiently. Now I will wait quietly for the coming day. Why don't we say these last words together? When disaster will strike the people who invade us. What has all of these images brought him to? The idea of justice. He's waiting on God. He's not doing nothing. He's conversing with him. He's singing to him. He's remembering his power. He's remembering who God is. And this brings him to justice and the idea that God will set all things right. And then the chapter wraps up with this beautiful, and the book wraps up with these beautiful images. Even though The fig trees have no blossoms, and there are no grapes on the vines. Even though the olive crop fails and the fields lie empty and barren, and even though the flocks die in the fields and the cattle barns are empty, wait for it, fig trees, grapes, olives, empty fields, flocks, referring to sheep and goats, and cattle. What does it represent? For the people of Israel? Their entire economic base. Even if our entire economic base is pulled out from underneath us. Wait for it. Verse 18. Let's say these words together. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. I will Shiganoth my head off. I will Shiganoth my butt off. I will Shiganoth until people make fun of me. Because the circumstances of my life don't deserve it, but the God and the character of my God do. And so I'm going to celebrate him. Let's say verse 19 together. The sovereign Lord is my strength. Wait, Shiganoth these words, okay? Let's say it. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. I love taking the dogs up north, and when we go into the woods, I swear my oldest, Finn, is kind of dumb sometimes because there's a deer standing 40 feet away, and Baxter just kills him on this because Baxter's nose, while his jaw is quivering, Baxter, the young one, his nose is always up in the air. And his jaw starts quivering, and he freezes. And then I have to say to Finn, deer. He's like, what, really? Where? And then he sees it, and then he gets bold, and he starts charging. And then picture it. To picture this. Although the forest floor is littered with logs and holes and stumps and trees and branches, have you ever seen a deer trip and fall? Never in my life. It bounds up with power and grace. And the dog just keeps on barking and chases as this thing just, you probably have seen one fall. Is that what you're going to tell me? Yeah. Well, that's good. And it bounds. And he says, the sovereign Lord is my strength. And he makes me as sure-footed as a deer. And then he calls up this image out of the woods and onto the mountaintops. Able to tread upon the heights. So above the tree line where nothing grows and it's just rock and snow and ice, here's this animal that God has allowed to be sure-footed. And Habakkuk says, that's me, baby. That's me. His hope in week 3 and in chapter 3 turns to joy. And we have to realize this. God doesn't always change our circumstances, but he can change us to meet those circumstances. Can we say that together? God doesn't always change our circumstances, but he can change us to meet those circumstances. And why does it say can and not he does? Because who's in the middle? You are. You are. Maybe Satan's influencing you, right? Satan wants to rob us from this. Satan wants to rob our joy. Satan wants to rob our hope. But we need to be doing what Habakkuk does while he waits. And we need to realize that God is bigger than all of our circumstances. God has got this. The band is going to come up and close us with a song, closing off this message, but also this series. And I want you to listen for these words because they're so important. Lauren Daigle, a few years ago, wrote and performed this song. And I love the rawness of so many of her lyrics. But she says this: letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. You know, Habakkuk had an idea of what life should look like, but he realized he had to lay that down at God's feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see, God. I've tried to win this war, I confess. I've tried to force it, Habakkuk chapter 2. 5 times I've tried to force your hand, God. Remember Habakkuk chapter 2? My hands are weary and I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. And listen to this. When you do not move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. You hear what I said? Is this person's want being met? Might even seem like the needs aren't being met. When you don't part the waters, I wish that I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, and here's the response: I will trust. I will trust. I will trust in you. Shigianeth us, will ya? Shigianeth us.
Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I try to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the light. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I needed you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So let all things be my life and breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already stood. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. 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 I will trust in
All right, my guess is that Many of us here have a mountain that we wish would be moved. We have a river that we need to get across and we wish God would just part it. Or maybe we feel like the armies of Pharaoh are coming up on our backside and we are looking at a body of water in front of us and we face sure and certain death. And we need God to part those waters. But you know what? The people of Israel didn't know that God was going to part those waters. But they were trusting for God to make a way. And so if that's you right now, I'm not going to ask you to raise a hand or anything, but would you just hold your hands out in front of you in expectation? To signify that you have hope, to signify that you're waiting on God, to signify maybe that you're wrestling and you're offering up this thing to God. God, we're holding on to these things in our lives, but we lay them at your feet. God, and we say, take them. We ask you, take them, God. Make things right. God, we pray for those relationships that are fraught and that are seemingly at an end. And God, we offer them to you. God, a lot of us in this room got our tax bills, and maybe some of us are wondering if we're going to be able to make that work in the coming months. God, we look around in the world and we see what's happening. And we say, God, I don't know how we're ever going to find a way out of this. And with Habakkuk, God, we stand before you and we just offer these up. But God, I pray that for each and every one of us, it wouldn't be our outcome that determines whether we trust in you. But rather it would be who you are. It would be your character. It would be what you have done in the past, that we would be able to remember these things and realize that you are a God of love and of mercy, and you are trustworthy, and what you have done in the past, you can do again. And so, God, we offer these things and we offer our lives to you. And some of us, God, maybe here today have never said yes to following you in our lives. And we realize we need to be more like Habakkuk and be able to wrestle with you and talk with you and to get to know you better. And I just want to say to those of you who are at that point, Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. I will show you my way, and it's not heavy, but it's a way that will help you to learn the unforced rhythms of grace in your life. And Jesus says, come and follow me if that's what you want. And if that's where you're at today, just say yes to God. And if you've done that, I just encourage you to come and tell me after this service that we can get you on some resources to help you on your journey and on that great journey. God, send us now from this church to be a people of hope. And God, bring us back together again this week, either in our pre-Christmas Eve or our Christmas Eve service, that we might celebrate the fulfillment of all the promises that are yes and amen in Jesus Christ. God, send us from this place to be a church of hope, we pray. And all God's people said, amen. Hey, thanks for your attention to God's word today.